still don't know what exactly happened and the exact circumstances of how Hillary Dawa became separated from his team, and also why it took so long for him to be found.
For 6 days, the silence from the death zone was absolute. The world assumed the worst. Hillary Dawa Sherpa's survival has done something rarely seen in the modern Everest era. It has stopped the machine, and people are looking in. While the mountaineering world was completely aware of the story of Hillary Dawa Sherpa, the tragedy of it all, despite the fact that Hillary Dawa Sherpa survived and crawled out of the Khumbu Glacier after 6+ days missing, left for dead on the mountain, suddenly the world took note and started looking at this Everest machine and began asking the questions that need to be asked, the questions that many of us in the mountaineering community have been asking for years, but nothing really changes. And my gut tells me that this interview that I'm going to play you in its totality today from Chris Thrall, he's the man from England who last saw Hillary Dawa Sherpa at the Yellow Band on Mount Everest on the day that he was descending from Camp 4. And what Chris Thrall tells is frankly is shocking, and as I will say later in the interview, had Hillary Dawa Sherpa died, nobody might have been asking these questions. They would have just counted it as another person disappearing on the mountain. But now Hillary Dawa's survival has created a scenario where the entire world is now looking, and people are demanding that changes be made in the Everest machine. Now, the irony is not lost on me that Hillary Dawa Sherpa was found by people from the Sagarmatha Pollution Control Committee, people who were basically on garbage duty. They were picking up the garbage, organizing it. That's what the SPCC has been doing. They stay after the mountain has been closed, and lo and behold, they come upon a living human being with no boots on, crawling with a ragged down suit, who had made it all the way down from the Yellow Band above Camp 3, and he crawled all the way through the Khumbu Icefall as well. I reported in a previous video, I said all the ladders had been pulled from the mountain. That was not true, but remains to be known that despite the fact that not all the ladders were pulled, Hillary Dawa still fell into a crevasse into which he was there for 2.5 days. And if not for the avalanches sloughing snow into there, he never would have been able to climb out, and he would have been probably buried there, and nobody would have ever known his fate. So yes, some of those ladders were removed, but as you will see from Chris Thrall, they were not removed by the people that you would expect them to, not the Icefall Doctors. There are so many questions that need to be answered. Let's just keep this one focused on Chris Thrall. It's not just about a disappearance, it's about the booming Everest business model and the profound human cost that has been ignored for too long. Hillary Dawa's return has sparked a rare, unified demand for accountability across the mountaineering community and beyond. And for the first time in a long time, there is genuine hope that the unchecked commercialization of the mountain may finally face its reckoning. And the accusations are severe. The Nepal Mountaineering Association has called for a probe after Hillary Dawa was left in the Everest death zone, and they've asked for an independent investigation into serious ethical concerns. Hillary Dawa is reportedly recovering, still in the intensive care unit. If you want the most up-to-date information on Hillary Dawa, I will put a link to his GoFundMe page in the description below, where there are periodic updates on his health. He spent 2.5 days in a crevasse, freezing, essentially. What I said in my previous video as well is I hope that Hillary Dawa never has to step foot in the mountains again as a worker. He should only go there to enjoy their beauty. This is a tragedy, and the only upside of it is that he did survive and that he's back with his family now. I have an interview with you today from Chris Thrall. He is the last person who saw Hillary Dawa Sherpa at the Yellow Band. I've spoken about him before in my previous video and used a clip from his post when he believed that Hillary Dawa was dead. I figured it was going to be possibly a 15, 20, 30-minute conversation, and basically, Chris Thrall talked for almost 2 hours, and I've decided I'm going to play the entire interview unedited here. Now, be aware that there are timestamps, chapters in the description, so if you want to move around, you can go and see the timestamps and jump forward or jump backward. And before I cut to Chris, I wanted to tell you about my 10 commandments of Mount Everest. I'm going to put them over on my Patreon page, patreon.com/Everest Mystery. You have to be a free subscriber over there in order to read them. I'm going to put you over there. Stay here first. Watch this video. The link is in the description below. Join the community. Let's hear your thoughts. Don't be shy. Share your ideas on this story. And again, the timestamps and chapters will be detailed throughout in the description below. Enjoy my conversation with Chris Thrall. I don't even know how you would even put into words the roller coaster of emotions that have probably been going on in your world. And that's not even talking about Dawa's family and everything. But can you just catch me up to date on how you're feeling and what that was like for you?
Yeah, I mean, I try to keep these things under wrap, Thom. You know, we've just climbed the highest mountain on the planet, and, you know, how can you say? It's all quite serious business, but I think in order to take these things on, you can't be... I think if you were too emotionally wrapped up in everything, I don't think you'd even set out to climb Mount Everest. So, you know, we set out to do a job. We were there to raise awareness of the link between childhood trauma, or what's referred to as adverse childhood experiences, and why we have such a high suicide rate in the veterans community. And yeah, my mission was to raise awareness of complex PTSD, essentially, and to try to get people talking about it, rather than to just assume that trauma in veterans must be something to do with the battlefield, and let's just write it off as that, as all, you know, many of the services and charities and media do. And I'm here to say, no, my buddy who I was supposed to row the Atlantic with last year, he was in our sister boat. We were in a boat called Isabel, and our sister boat was called Danielle, and Craig, bless him, was supposed to row in Danielle, and he left an awful message on Facebook saying, "Hi folks, by the time you read this, I'll no longer be with you." And then he went on to list the reasons he was going to kill himself, which he had done by that point. And the irony, Thom, is these are very wonderful, lovely people. You know, just like me or you, people that love us, friends that have no clue what's going on in our mind. And I just wanted to shed light on this and say, listen, read this guy's book. Craig wrote a book. I think he discussed Afghanistan for 2 pages. He talked about his turbulent childhood for 3 or 4 chapters, and nobody's focusing on this. So that was my mission. And every year I try to take on some sort of charity stunt or some kind of awareness for veterans' mental health. So last year it was rowing the Atlantic with my veteran buddy Louis. Before that I ran across the Sahara Desert in the infamous and grueling Marathon des Sables. Before that I think I did a quadruple Ironman, and before that I ran the length of the United Kingdom, so 36 ultra marathons in 36 days, sleeping by the side of the road. So yeah, so that was my mission. And yeah, I mean, emotion, it's, you know, life is full on, Thom, you know, life is, I don't know if you say you take it seriously or you cruise through. I don't know which is which when you kind of have done this sort of thing a lot. This is probably the third or fourth expedition now I've been on where somebody's died, so it's not like it's unfamiliar for me. We lost somebody when we were scuba diving in the Antarctic. I watched someone collapse and temporarily die from a heart attack on the Marathon des Sables. Fortunately, I believe they were able to bring them back around. Literally, I was the closest person to this person as they were resuscitating them. And as always, you think, you know, the emotions with the family, really, isn't it? You know, it's, to me, it'd be a bit weird to get too emotional about someone else's, you know, situation, because I think that puts the focus on you when really it should be on the loved ones. So hope that answers your question.
Yeah, that was good. That, Chris, can you bring me back and just tell me a little bit about that day? You know, you went up, you were up at Camp 4, you had summited, and you're on your way down. This sounds like the conditions were not good, and that's when you saw Hillary Dawa, and you guys were just beating it, like just getting down the mountain. And just walk me through that a little bit, just so you don't have to go into the minutia of it, but I'm just love to hear you tell me that. And I don't know, maybe you pick up a couple of different details that I haven't heard before.
Yeah, so Summit Day was, obviously it's a big old thing for anyone, but you got to remember, I've already suffered acute mountain sickness, so I had to leave base camp at my own expense, and it is quite an expense. I had to get 2 choppers down to Kathmandu. The first to Lhotse, where I was in hospital on a drip, having lost 2 stone in weight in this process, and I'm not the biggest of chaps in the first place. So I was in Kathmandu. I got a rather distressing text message from the expedition company when I replied, look, I've been in Kathmandu 3 days, sitting in the sun, absolutely wonderful. I'm firing now. I'm ready to come back. I probably was the only person that went back there, Thom, that wasn't coughing, which is quite ironic because I coughed one night so much in base camp that I could hear I was the only person in base camp coughing all night long. And I was apologetic to my fellow climbers because, they've got to try and get some sleep and put up with this. So when I was in Kathmandu, I had a rather disturbing message from the expedition company when I said, look, how do I get back there? Can I chopper it back? Because we've been up to 6,200 meters, so technically I'm acclimatized. Or should I get a chopper to Lhotse and maybe walk the last part of the trek again? This is nothing unusual. This is just being a good climber. You got to look after yourself. And many, many people after their rotations go back to Kathmandu anyway to chill out for a few days and let your blood cells work their magic. So I got this text message said to the effect of, I've got it here on my phone, but to the effect of, why are you bothering coming back? Why don't you go home? You're not a particularly strong climber anyway, which is purely subjective, Thom. Obviously, I am a strong climber because I summited Everest. This thing has cost you enough money, and we're behind with the schedule, or words to this effect. So I would imagine probably they were used to people just going home. I've seen a lot of people with what I would call overcomable challenges on Everest. Just get up and go home. I mean, recently we saw Ryan Mitchell, didn't we, with altitude sickness. I can't comment on him. I don't know if he had pulmonary edema or whatever. And I love the guy. He's a great guy. But I was quite surprised that you can just get up and go home like that without any attempt at sort of rehab. But like I say, I don't know Ryan's exact situation. So I messaged back saying, sorry, this is not how this works. And in my mind, Thom, you know, this is the culmination of literally 50 years of dreaming since I first saw a book by Chris Bonington on my dad's bookshelf. And my dad said, my dad's not an outdoor guy, Thom. He never has been. You know, he's actually a carpet salesman. But he said to me, pointing at this book, he said, these are the guys, Chris. These are the guys. And I knew then there was something special about this. After the 95 disaster, I happened to read a book by Matt Dickinson, I believe his name is.
Yeah.
And he kind of took over where Brian Blessed faltered on his third summit attempt, I think it was. And so they turned the camera on Matt, who was part of the film crew. And he wrote this amazing book, and I was gripped. And Everest either gets you or it doesn't, clearly. So all these years of dreaming, all these years of reading every single thing I could, watching every single documentary, watching your wonderful show, everything. On top of that, I've spent a year off work. I say off work, you know, apportioning my work to getting ready for Everest, raising the money. I've done hundreds of YouTube shows now where I've talked about childhood trauma, what it is in us veterans that can, you know, make us susceptible to, or that we've likely experienced this. So I brought attention probably to, I don't know, over 1 million viewers. On top of that, the public have very kindly supported my mission. I've borrowed an awful lot of money off people that I love very much, that I promised to pay back. On top of that, even buying your equipment is just a full-scale operation, as I know you know. And, you know, buying 3 pairs of boots just to try to get that one that you think in the death zone is not going to see you getting frostbite in your feet and all this kind of stuff. So, not least of which, I've flown to Kathmandu. I've yomped, as we say in the military. I've trekked to base camp. All my stuff is there. I can't just go home, Thom. You know, like I say, I've no doubt maybe many people, but that's literally just not me, and it's certainly not the you know, the background of a Royal Marines commando. So I messaged back to say, look, you better think again. I'm on my way. Either you tell me how to get back there, or I'm just going to appear. So that was that. Couple more choppers. One back to Lhotse to check my acclimatization was okay. I was fine. One back to base camp. Again, I was absolutely fine. But then I ended up in this weird situation where when I got back, all my equipment, all my kit had been packed into my duffel bags. Every single thing, including my washing line. So the notion that, oh, we did this for security, you know, there's a lot of, they don't mind to say it, there's a lot of Sherpas wandering around base camp, Chris, and you can't trust all of them. And I was like, yeah, but that doesn't explain packing my washing line and eating my Toblerone that my son had bought me at the airport that said, Dad, my hero, which I had on prominent display because my relationship with my son, Thom, is everything. I'm going up there. It's not just me. It's me and him. And the fact that he'd come running up to me in the airport with this chocolate bar that said, Dad, my hero, and now somebody had, you know, either thrown it away or scoffed it, that showed me that I would say, in my mind, obviously subjectively, they didn't think I was coming back. and that they'd bargained. At the same time, my Sherpa had been sent home. I was put under the impression he'd had a heart attack and he'd been flown to hospital in Kathmandu. So I picked up the phone and called him because he was on my WhatsApp, and he said, no, they didn't pay me and they made me walk back. Okay, this is his words. So day before summit day, literally the boss and his son got me in the office. It was one of those kind of Gestapo-like 2 against 1 meetings. It didn't feel good. And it wasn't very professional. To say I think alcohol was involved, not that I judge people that drink, but, I think somebody was under the influence, let's say. And they said, right, you've got no Sherpa, so you've got to buy another one. And you've got no oxygen on the mountain because we've got it sat here. So I said, hang on a sec, this isn't making sense. Why have I got to pay for a Sherpa when it's in my contract, obviously with an expedition company, that they provide oxygen and a Sherpa? So they said, oh, because you went back to Kathmandu. I said, what? That's literally got nothing to do with anything. I did the responsible thing and went and got myself better. That's like a good thing. I've come back. You're telling me the Sherpa had a heart attack. The other people are saying, no, he had a drink problem. And you're trying to put it on me that because I went back to Kathmandu, I've somehow, you're entitled to fire my Sherpa and then I have to buy another one. That literally makes sense. And one more thing is, why is he my Sherpa? We haven't even really been up on the mountain yet. We haven't, our Sherpas were interchangeable all the time. I don't mean that dehumanizingly. I'm saying that 1 minute, you could be with this guy. The next minute you set off with this guy. I said, so why are you not asking the other climber to pay $4,000 as well, or go halves with me? Not that I agree with paying any of it. To me, this is an extortion. And all they could say, Thom, was, well, you went back to Kathmandu. As if that was some sort of, that entitled them to send my Sherpa home and make me pay for another one and get this oxygen sorted out. So I had no choice, because by this time, I had a choice, but by this time, Thom, I'm in for a penny, in for a pound. I'm literally about to go on my summit push. I've put all of what I've just told you into this, and I'm not the sort of person that's just going to roll over and go home. So I spoke to my wonderful partner, my girlfriend, and said, honey, look, they've got me over a barrel, hun. If I don't pay this $4,000, in their minds, they can cancel my part in the expedition. So we came up with the money. The oxygen got helicoptered up to Camp 2. Bear in mind, we're starting our summit push the next day. So my oxygen isn't at Camp 4 where it should be. It's at Camp 2 where we're heading now. I'll come back to that, Thom.
So you had to hustle back up to 2, but your oxygen was at 2 and it should have been at 4, I guess.
Yes.
Where you're at.
Exactly. Oh, that was right. Secondly, I said, and you make sure there's 7 cans, because that's what I paid for. From the onset, I said, how much is a tank of oxygen? They said $500. I was like, look, the money I've spent, probably, oh, God knows, but, talking about £50,000 UK, maybe $70,000, all in all. Please don't quote me on that, but a lot of money. What's another $500 if it means that there's going to be a safety element to this expedition? So I purchased 2 more cylinders, as did the Polish climber. When I said, right, you are going to send 7 cans up for me, aren't you? They immediately turned around and said, no, you haven't got 7. You used one when you were ill. So I said, no, when I was ill, I put an oxygen mask on my face for 10 minutes. It clearly was doing nothing, or I felt it was doing nothing. So that was all I used of it. They went, oh, okay. Oh, in that case, it all leaked out. I was like, hang on, no, you can't have it both ways. Either I used it or it's leaked out. You can't just try and cover your bases. And again, I think they were trying to cadge oxygen off us because the boss's son wanted to summit. And they realised they weren't going to get the amount of oxygen up there they needed. So they were looking to skimp and put it back on us that we'd used it. So, cut long story short, I set off to Camp 2. On this particular summit push, I think I set off with Hillary Dawa. By this time, don't ask me why, but the boss's son had done a U-turn. He'd come back down. I think they'd realised, you know, if you use these cans of there won't be enough for the clients. So we set off, and when I was flying back to base camp, the boss looked at me and said, "We've sent your Sherpa home for a heart attack." I was like, okay. He said, "We've got you another Sherpa, a chap called Dawa." And the first thing that came into my mind, Thom, was they're trying to fob me off with the chef. He's our Camp 2 chef. He's not a high altitude, mounting guide from. So Dawa came into the food tent or the kitchen, wherever I was at the time, and I said, "Dawa." We didn't call him Hillary then. This started later on. But I said, "Dawa, are we climbing Mount Everest together?" And he said, this look of shock came over his face. He said, "No, I'm the Camp 2 chef." I was like, "Oh, sorry." When the big boss said, "I'm climbing with a guy called Dawa," I just assumed it was you. So, my mistake. No, Thom, I was completely right. It was him. He just hadn't even been told yet. So when we started climbing up to Camp 2, I said, "Dawa, have you actually climbed Mount Everest?" He's like, "No." I was like, "Really?" He said, "Yeah." And he mentioned the number of times he tried to climb from Camp 4 to the summit and hadn't made it. He also said another interesting thing. As we came out of the Khumbu, he pointed to the crevasse and said, "I fell in there once. I was in there for, I can't remember the amount of time," he said, which is quite ironic. That little did we know he was going to be back in there quite shortly, bless him. So that was that. When we were at Camp 2, we were effectively left there on our own, which is fine. I'm a big tough guy. I can sit in a tent for 2 days. Doesn't bother me whatsoever. But the two Sherpas then climbed to Camp 4. The wind was so bad, it took them 2.5 days. So they spent a night at Camp 3 and a night at 4. The long, tall and short of it was when we got back up there, we got to Camp 4, I had, what did I have? 3.5 cylinders of oxygen left. So the 3 that you're supposed to have to summit, plus I had a half. The Polish chap was similar, but it turned out these Sherpas have been dipping into their summit supply to get the oxygen up there, which is, what do we say, borrowing from Peter to pay Paul, or some sort of expression. And so we were at Camp 4, and the expedition company started talking about us coming down. Well, hang on a second. Do you know what it's taken me to get up here? Right? This is not how it works. There is the summit. Literally, I'm looking at it, or certainly one of the false crests. There's the summit. I've got 3.5 cans of oxygen, as has the Polish chap. We're going, folks. The only thing that will change our mind is if a safety concern comes up. For example, the weather kicks in. then obviously we're not putting anyone's lives at risk. But we're not just coming down because it makes it easier for you to put a tick in your box when you're the ones that have got us up here on the last day of the season. I was literally, Thom, the last person to stand on Mount Everest. Rather bizarre, actually. If you think Everest is growing in height every year, but technically I'm the guy that's been highest on the planet than anyone else on the planet, and I will be for the next year. So we looked at the oxygen, and I can't say too much at this point, Thom, because I'm speaking to the police at the moment, but let's just say there were other cans of oxygen flying around up there. You know, this wasn't mutually exclusive, that this is what there was other stuff available, right? And we said, listen, to keep things in the safety margin, Hillary's not going to summit. No disrespect to Hillary, but I don't think he was bothered anyway. He's just going to carry some oxygen up for us. And we will summit with the other Sherpa, just so that there's only one person making that final run across the balcony to the summit pyramid and back, which can cost, 1 or 2 cylinders. And that gives us 2 cylinders in the bank for a nice safety margin. So that's what happened. We didn't set out in any particular order, but that night the Sherpas were to-ing and fro-ing. The radio just would not stop blaring, and obviously it was all in Nepalese, so we only understood the odd word. I sat down with the Sherpas and I explained for us as clients what we had put into this, what it meant to us, and could you please try and understand that we're here camped for, there's Everest summit, the weather is fine, we're very lucky to have this summit window, we can't really just say, and go back down. So that was that. The Sherpas went away and they had a conversation and they came back. They said, right, fellas, we understand. We're going at 11 o'clock or something to this effect, Thom. I can't remember the exact time. This is in the evening. And we set off. As we set off up the South Col, this last stretch, I call it the meadow because it's this big flat stretch of snow with one rope right up the middle of it. There were 4 climbers already in front of us. So 2 Nepalese, I believe, because we saw them coming down, and there was some Westerners, and I know that because one of them turned to me and said, "Enjoy the view, mate." And I said, "Thank you very much." We did the thing where we, clipped around each other on the rope, said goodbye. And then I remember at that point I was on the balcony on my own while the Sherpa was securing the oxygen tanks to the rope. And that was it. You set off up the Col, and you can literally see the summit. I say the summit, I assumed it was the summit. There's so many false summits up there, it became almost annoying. The false crests was unbelievable. There's about 6 or 7 of them, and each one I thought, right, this is it. And that's it, Thom. Nothing is stopping you from not only achieving a lifelong dream, but also succeeding in your mission to raise awareness of veterans' mental health. As someone myself who was chronically mentally unwell and homeless on the streets of Hong Kong, in my younger years, I've got a good message here. This is going to save lives, and there's the summit. And the funny thing, Thom, about Everest that nobody mentions is, whereas when we rode the Atlantic, all you got to do is get in that boat and row, and as long as you don't stop, you're going to get to the Caribbean. You're going to tick off, I rode the Atlantic for charity. Everest is very different. Everest, you can put everything into it. You can put thousands upon thousands of dollars. You can put your heart on the line. You can, talk the talk. You can do the training. You can buy the... There's no guarantee anyone's going to make it. Absolutely, you are not going to find out until that summit day, and until the end of the summit, or halfway through. It's a very strange position to put so much of your life and your investment into something when you don't know if it's going to work, and you might have to come home, tail between your legs, and say, "I failed, folks." Not that we can't do that. Many people do. But that was strange. So to see it coming real before my eyes was amazing. Once I finally got onto the balcony, because it's all new to me up there, I wasn't quite sure which actual stage am I at now. But when you see that iconic sort of journey in front of you through the balcony, and I recognized it immediately from the photo Nims Dai took. Nims being a fellow veteran, and also he's been on my podcast. Then I recognized, this is that bit, and so that should be the summit. And it was quite special climbing it on my own while the Sherpa hung back, and I think he was just securing the oxygen tanks. And there's a couple of dead bodies up there, which kind of, how can you say? It was nice to be able to approach them, Thom, on my own without a huge crowd, scrabbling for ropes and stepping everywhere, and gave me a moment to just say a prayer for their families and spare them a thought. And then it was on to the summit, by which time the Sherpa had caught up with me. So that was that. People are referring to it as a late summit, but really it wasn't late if you think what time we set off. Had we set off at 7 in the evening, when most people do, we would have summited at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And, but as it happened, because we had all this toing and froing and argy-bargy about this, that, and we didn't actually set off till quite late. At no point was there any danger. I wasn't tired until we got back to the tents. Then it really started to sort of weigh heavily on me. And I certainly felt it the next morning before our descent from Camp 4. But I just want to say, what is a summit window? If the weather's, I'd rather go at night when there was nobody there and the weather was perfect. I say perfect, it was very overcast. And the wind was getting to the point where I thought, oh my gosh, I hope it doesn't pick up any more than this, because this could be, this could chill us basically. And no, you're off. And when we got there, it was quite cold, so we couldn't take our gloves off for very long. So that put pay to all the kind of videos that you wanted to make and the photo. We took a quick photo, and then I made a message, took a photo of my complex PTSD banner, made a little video for my son with the lucky little wolf that he'd given me to keep me safe, which I subsequently gave to Hillary Dawa's daughter to keep her safe. And clearly this little wolf works, because her dad stepped out of the wilderness the next day. And that was it, Thom. There was no overthinking. There was certainly not the, we weren't afforded the, what do you say? The room for the debate that seems to be all over the internet at the moment. We just summited Everest, doing what you do. You climb up a peak. You make sure you don't die, then you turn around and go back down. And it was all a bit, the achievement was sort of overshadowed because it was late in the day. It was a bit cold. I didn't get the videos done. I had plans to, do a lot of sort of promotion stuff up there. So I was a little bit disappointed. It kind of took the edge off. And of course you start, you are tired, I mean, we were so far from that point when someone should turn around. And I get it. I can understand somebody pushing themselves so much they've got nothing left in the tank. That wasn't us, Thom. Not in any way whatsoever. There's no reason to turn around. We're full of energy. The Sherpas are just strong, or this Sherpa was strong as an ox. So that was that. And then the next day, I really hadn't drunk much for, you don't drink much at all up there compared to what you're expending in vapor from your breath and sweat and this. So you can't drink enough water to keep you hydrated. And you know that because when you go for a pee, it's not a pleasant sight. So I was in the tent in the morning and the guys were like, right, we're going down round about 10. I think it was like early afternoon, something like that. And I said, guys, I need to drink. Could you? And the Sherpas came in. Hillary came in. He literally lay on me as he was putting the snow into the pot to melt. And I asked him, could you bring the cooker in the tent, please, because it's so cold. And in between putting the snow in the pot, he lay on me and slept, which I thought was quite endearing, really. This big, huge Sherpa who's just lying on it. I'm in the sleeping bag. He's just lying on me and sleeping, Thom. This guy was clearly tired. He was 57. I'm 56, but I'm not carrying the huge weights these guys carry and having to shoot up to Camp 4 when I'm told, and back down again and then back up again. So the next day we set off down the mountain. As soon as I got the oxygen on, I felt like a new man, literally. I just thought, right, come on, let's get down here. It's not going to take long to get to Camp 2 the way that I'm feeling. And as we came up towards the yellow band, Hillary took his pack off and sat on it. He'd kind of like take the straps off and then sit against it on the snow. This happened hundreds of times, Thom. Absolutely no indication whatsoever that he was struggling in any way. He was, in my mind, just taking a break. And I turned and said, Hillary, are you okay, brother? He said, yes, Chris, you go. He subsequently said that this is the moment he ran out of oxygen. Thom, I had no idea what I could have done other than maybe try and get the other Sherpa before he disappeared, because the other Sherpa went straight down to Camp 2. What I could have done with my limited oxygen anyway, I would have done my best. But the irony is, when he said no go, I said, okay. So I went to the yellow band, began to, it was an abseil, but I think I climbed it because it wasn't that steep. And at the bottom was the Polish climber. And I could just see him motionless in the gloom. I could see the color of his summit suit. And I thought that he'd fallen off the abseil and that possibly we'd lost him. Or at worst, he was seriously injured. So as I climbed down, I'm shouting, mate, are you okay? Are you okay? And then suddenly he said, yes, I'm okay, but I've got no oxygen. So I called up the Polish climber. I knew he had frostbite from the summit attempt because him and Hillary Dawa, as I say, Hillary was never going to make the summit anyway. He was just supposed to be carrying oxygen.
How far did Hillary go on summit day? He just went up a little bit or to the balcony?
I'm not quite sure what the definition of the balcony is. To me, it's that iconic bit that slightly overhangs where you're going to see some unpleasant stuff. And it incorporates the Hillary step. There was another balcony-like bit, and they hadn't quite made it to that, so they weren't They weren't kind of at the business end of Everest, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. So, but he had gone along a little bit on that corniced ridge with the, like you look down either way and it's thousands of meters.
Yeah, they
But like,
didn't make it.
so the
They
Hillary
didn't make it
step
that
is,
far.
yeah. And so the Hillary step is like, I usually operate in feet, but it's like 8,700 meters or so. But suffice it to say, Hillary Dawa didn't wait. He didn't just say, I'll be here in base camp. Camp 4. He was up there in the thick of things for quite some time.
Yeah, he was leading the Polish chap up. That was it. It's the way the cookie crumbled,
Yeah.
Tom. There was no discussion. I set off for the pyramid, I set off for the summit because there it was. The stronger climber, the second Sherpa, was in front of me, so I just tucked in behind him. The Polish climber, when I look back, they were gradually falling behind. And of course, everyone's got different climbing styles. So, for example, I don't really need to eat when I'd rather put that energy into the climbing. Whereas other people insist, they're going to have their 3 meals a day and to me, that's all extra weight, yada, yada. So everybody's different. And I had no idea why they were falling back. I had no idea what what they were carrying in their packs. I knew I went kind of assault style, as light as I could. Couple of drinks, flask of tea, couple of extra layers in case the weather really turned, and my summit mitts. That was basically it. There's a few more bits and pieces, a bag of snacks and this kind of thing. So they fell more and more behind. When we came down, and like I say, we got to this bit that I called the meadow, which is the bottom of the South Col, and the tents are just there. It's an optical illusion because it looks like you go down and then have to come up to your tents, but it's just the way the mountain contours. And by the time I caught up with the Polish guy, he was actually lying in the tent. He just crawled in there. And I said, Bud, what's going on? What? I got the report up there when I asked my Sherpa, what's the matter? He said something about you hadn't got goggles and the snow was going in your eyes. This is the communication issue as well, Tom, for anybody who's interested in this sort of thing. The communication with your Sherpas who speak in our case, they spoke very limited English. So yes, so the communication is not always as best as it can be. And when I spoke to the Polish guy, he said, "No, Chris, we got fought back by the cold." And look at my fingers, and he took his gloves off, and he had frostbite all across the tips of his fingers. I wouldn't say gobsmacked. I was quite shocked, Tom, because I had a wonderful summit suit by a certain British company in the north of England. Begins with R and 3 letters, ends in B. And I felt absolutely snug as a bug in a rug the whole time. I had Scarpa boots. I didn't even put the heated insole things in because I wanted to save weight. And they were fine. A couple of times my toes were going numb, but I just wiggled them quickly and they came back to life. And I had Rab guide gloves on. I didn't even get a chance to put my expensive mittens that God knows how many hours I would have painstakingly picked them out on the internet. I didn't get a chance to wear them. So they're as yet. Friends, if you'd like a brand new pair of Rab Summit gloves, just send me an email. But, I was surprised. I was like, oh my God. The Polish chap had worn all homegrown equipment, so all Polish brand. I can't comment on whether that was a factor, but that was that. So I was surprised. The last thing I thought was this lad that's 16 years younger than me, big strapping strong lad, would have got fought back by the cold. And this is where possibly, had Hillary been more experienced rather than being the Camp 2 cook, he might have been able to say, no, we're going to leave the oxygen here for the guys, or take what we need. We're going down. I'm speculating, Tom. How do I know? So, so that was that. And like I say, on the way down, I came across I'd left Hillary to have a sit down on his backpack. That's what we did. I did it hundreds of times. He did it hundreds of times. No need to check on each other. It's just, And when I came across the Polish guy with his frostbite and no oxygen on virtually the edge of the death zone, we're talking the bottom of the yellow band. Obviously, I went into help mode. I was never going to leave him. Certainly not at that stage. Had things got any more serious, and they really did get serious. I mean, I felt like we were in that program. I shouldn't be alive. That's how bad, I thought, are we going to make this? And what should have been, say, an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours to Camp 3, not that we were staying at Camp 3, but I knew I could probably find a tent there abandoned. And if it had a cooker in it, or if I could go round and find a cooker lying about, I could get hot water. I can help revive this chap a bit. So I'm going down every now and again. I take all my stuff off, give him my oxygen. We'd have a breather, little drink of lemon tea, and then we continue again. I got us into a tent in Camp 3. I found a cooker in it. I went outside. I gathered some snow. The wind was starting to howl now, and I made us drinks, Tom. And the Polish guy slept for an hour and a half while I just continued boiling water. And of course, all the time I'm there with my head torch, I'm a beacon should Hillary come down. And when did I realize he wasn't coming down? Well, as I came down with the Polish guy, I looked up and I said, words to the effect of, I think we've got a problem here. You don't sit down that long in the death zone without there being an issue. But of course, it all sounds easy on paper, doesn't it? You don't realize that he's about a football pitch and a half up a mountain that's going to take not just all your oxygen, but it's going to take your life if you try and go back up there in, what was phasing in and out of a storm, basically. And I'm not afraid to die, Tom, to do the right thing, but I've got an 11-year-old son, and I wasn't about to abandon him on some fool's mission. But this wasn't even an option. This sounds like an option when you read about it in the media. This wasn't an option. I'm looking after a Polish climber. We've only got to Camp 3. We've now got to get down to Camp 2. The ropes are covered in the snow. We've got to guess our way down there for the most part. Some of the ropes were uncovered, but as we got further down and the snow had settled, they were all covered. At this point, I'm kicking myself that I hadn't taken a compass bearing, because we're just stabbing in the dark thing. And every now and again, we'd see a little, like a glove somebody had dropped, that reassured us that, right, we're on the right path. So, yes.
Wow. So this is going down the Lhotse Face. That obviously I would hope that you had the ropes on that, because that's really steep. But we're talking at the bottom as you're making your way to Camp 2, and it's flat, essentially flat. That's where you're talking about that. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. And it's middle of the night, and it's in the middle of the night. So
middle of the night, pretty much a whiteout.
Oh boy.
It got worse the next day when we tried to go through the Icefall. That was a complete whiteout, and there were no ropes for the most part.
So you got to Camp 2. Was it dark when you got to Camp 2 in the Western Khum, or?
It took us 19 hours, I think, to get to Camp 2. So by the time we got there, it was about 7 in the morning, for example, sometime in the morning.
Was anybody there? Was the camp were any human beings there? The other Sherpa on the team, was he there?
The other Sherpa was there in his tent. Unbeknown to us at that point, because we only saw them on the walk out in the morning, there were 3 team members there from another team waiting to get choppered out.
So were there any radios? Like, did anybody call at this time? Were there any calls down to whoever was waiting at base camp? Hey, we need some help because we got a guy up at the yellow band. Was there any conversation at that time, or were people just like kind of zombie-like making their way out?
Well, there was only, like I say, the 3 guys were waiting for a chopper. I saw them as we descended the Icefall. I remember speaking to them because I said, Khumbu? And they went, yeah, thank you. Hillary had the satellite phone, which was his choice. When he saw it in my tent in the morning at Camp 4, he said, I'll take that. I didn't think twice about it because, you know, we were descending together. So should I have needed it, then I could have borrowed it from, you know, grabbed it from him.
Did he know how to use it? Or was it?
I don't know if he knew how to use it, and it wouldn't surprise me if he didn't. They're quite technical. They're not hugely, they're a little bit like the old Nokias, but you've still got to know your way through the menus to get to the contacts. So Hillary carried the sat phone. Both Sherpas had radios, but I don't know. I'm guessing Hillary's radio, the battery would probably have run out by then.
Wow. So when you got there, did those other Sherpa ask about Hillary Dawa and say what, or, you know, I mean, or there was just one left? Because I know that you and the other client are you're fighting for your life, and protocol in terms of how an expedition operator would function wouldn't necessarily be your concern at that time. You're trying to get down there, and then the protocol would follow. But did that Sherpa say, hey, you know, Hillary, you know, radio call down to base camp? Nobody, like, I just like wondering if he showed concern.
I said to the Sherpa, Hillary's not with us. His immediate reply was, oh, don't worry, he's sleeping at Camp 3. And I knew this had come out of nowhere, Thom, because had he been at Camp 3, we would have seen him. We were there for 2 hours, plus it had taken us 9 hours to get there. That's 11 hours for a Sherpa who was strong as an ox to make his way there no matter what had happened. The fact he wasn't there indicated there was a serious problem, and anyone that knows anything about the death zone can draw their own conclusions when you spent 19 hours in it. I don't think Beck Weathers spent that long up there, you know. And so the first thing the Sherpa said is, I'm going back up, which was quite admirable. But you got to remember, he's got 2 clients there. Not that I would have stopped him, but you know, we've somehow got to get through the Icefall, Thom.
So the 2 clients, were they with your expedition company, that Sherpa? So there were ultimately 4 guys from, no. Not saying the name of your company? Like
Himalayan Traverse, it's all over the media.
Okay, just wanted to, because I knew it, and I messaged the owner of the company many times on WhatsApp, and I did get a couple of replies, but they stopped. And I would imagine probably now is not the best time for him to tell me the story, but given there's an investigation. But so the Sherpa who said, I'm going back up, that guy was from Himalayan Traverse, or that was from the summit client side? Oh,
yes,
okay.
No. The only guys there now are Himalayan Traverse, and somewhere down in Camp 2, about halfway, we were at the top end, halfway down, there was this, I believe he's an Italian guy or something. He was there with 2 Sherpas, or they appeared to be 2 Sherpas. And I just happened to see them as I walked out. And I later heard they were waiting for a chopper. We were nothing to do with them. We had no conversation with them. Like I say, the first thing our Sherpa did was burst into tears when he realised that, oh, this is actually serious. I explained that I don't think he was at Camp 3. That would be unrealistic because we've just come from there. And he would have seen my headlight for 11 hours as he made his way down. And he'd know exactly which tent to go and come and say, hey, guys, look, sorry, I'm here now. So that was that. They spoke, obviously, with base camp, which was just a flurry of conversations back and forward. And bearing in mind that the icefall is closing at any time, in fact, it was actually our Sherpa that went back up to bring the ladders in.
Wow. But we're talking the 29th now, right?
Yes, I believe so.
Or into the... No, you're in the 29th now of May.
Yes.
And you knew you had to hustle to get out of there.
Yeah, hindsight's a wonderful thing, Tom.
Yeah.
In hindsight, I'd suggested to the Polish climber, listen, why don't you call your rescue company? You've got fairly severe frostbite. I mean, apparently there's people getting choppers down the mountain because they sneezed. You've actually got a bona fide reason to call your company. In hindsight, Tom, maybe I could have jumped in the chopper, although they are really, they're going to charge you money for that. And maybe that could have freed up the Sherpa to go back up. But like I say, this is all hindsight. We're in a battle for survival. We've been going 19 hours through the blizzard, falling off the ropes and just literally, still clipped to them, obviously, with a carrier, but grabbing the ropes so that we don't hurtle down the face and pull out the anchors. It was quite... it was a serious business. It's Mount Everest in bad weather, in a whiteout, without being able to find the ropes. And I've just summited, and he's attempted to summit and ended up with frostbite and, mild hypothermia or whatever it is he had. So, it's a bit like being rescued from the storm and then saying to your lifeguard, oh, look, hang on, I'm just going to go swimming back out here because, there might be somebody. That's not how your mind works. You're kind of, you're looking to find that final piece of safety, I suppose.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So at least in your mind, not that there was a big thought at that time, but so the guy was aware that Hillary Dawa was maybe in Camp 3. I don't know if he said that to placate you, but at least he was aware that he was up there. And then there was all this conversation to base camp. So it wasn't like nobody knew. So you knew that all the information had trickled down to the powers that be at base camp. Okay, so let's just pick it. Let's have you leaving. You go through the Khumbu Icefall. I guess that's next, and you get to base camp is your next thing. That must have been quite the ordeal. You said the weather after Camp 2 was not good at all. And so was that a big struggle? And were all the ropes and ladders still in position when you made your way through there?
Yes, so we set off. There was a spot of sunshine, which I think probably lulled us into a false sense of security, thinking, this is just another trip through the icefall. And that very soon the weather closed in, literally within an hour, 2 hours, to the point where, like I say, all the ropes were snowed under. It was very hard to know what was up and what was down. Complete whiteout. And the three of us just struggled. We kept digging for the ropes. We're obviously in a crevasse field because it's the whole Khumbu and the route to Camp 1 is all a crevasse field. So there were times where I think we were just going for it and fingers crossed. We haven't got time to keep going as slow as we were. And eventually we got through 5 o'clock the next morning. So we left about 10 or 11. So again, what's that? Another 19, 20-hour hike on top of a 20-hour hike the day before, all of which on little food and little to drink.
So then you get to base camp, and how many people of the company, like how many Himalayan Traverse people were still there? Was there a cook? Like, did you get any food made for you, water, your tent? How did that look from there?
Yeah, they had 2 wonderful chefs at base camp.
Yeah.
Or one of them, they referred to him as the kitchen boy, which I never could, but we become really good friends. They really looked after me. They couldn't do enough for me. So they came out as with the director of the company and his son. And yeah, that was it. That was the 4 of them. And, it's a funny situation to be in, because on the one hand, they didn't exactly support us to summit, or at least me to summit. But then on the other hand, here we are coming down the mountain. We have just summited Everest, which is quite important to these companies. So it was a bizarre situation where they were sort of trying to celebrate my summit. I obviously was just completely not interested, because we'll deal with the summit thing another day. Let's just, let's just celebrate the fact that we've got down, but also let's spare a thought for our buddy up there who is most likely dead. And from that perspective, Thom, there was nothing to celebrate, was there? So we just sat in, had a cup of tea, had some food. I was so exhausted, they came and woke me up about 10 in the morning, because I just slept in the chair for a few hours, and they insisted that I go off to bed. So go off to my tent and sleep.
So did it seem like this is the disconnect for the company, because you're back and it's not your job to set a rescue or a search mission in motion, but did it seem that they were like, all right, we're going to get our best guy up there to go look for him? Or did they seem resigned that Hillary Dawa was gone and not like it was? Did it seem like they were going to make any effort to go get him? Or
it's hard to comment on, Thom, and it's hard to speculate. And I tell you why, is we live in a strange world where, if you think about it, it's a contradiction in terms. On the one hand, people want to talk about this miraculous comeback from death, which defies every single possible. And on the other hand, but they don't want to actually acknowledge the fact that, hang on, this guy was 19 hours in the death zone. He's dead. That's what happens up there. You can't have it both ways. Either you acknowledge that it's absolutely extraordinary to come back from it. It's miraculous is the word. And therefore, anybody in that scenario, in reality, is facing a fatality. I'm not trying to put us as clients above anything. No, I don't care about the politics or anything. But surely when you've got 2 clients and a fatality, the clients, their welfare has now kind of taken precedent, So I'm just pointing out that it's quite an interesting situation. Everyone wants to focus on the impossibility of crawling out the death zone after, at least 20 hours or whatever that we were coming down, that we looked back up and saw nothing. But no one wants to, I say no, I'm just talking about the royal no one. No one wants to acknowledge the fact that, hang on, for that to be miraculous, you need to accept that he was most likely dead up there. You know, I know that's probably sounds a bit strange to some people, but, and I'm not, like I say, I'm not the expedition company, I'm not a rescue company, and I'm not an insurance company, so I got no dog in this fight. I don't know what the inner workings of those conversations that the expedition company had with their Sherpas, or with the insurance people, or with the helicopter. I literally have no idea. I wasn't a party to it, and even if I was, I wouldn't have understood the Nepalese. So I think it's I think there's far more to this, Thom, than just meets the eye. I think as a Nepalese expedition company, I'm not in any way trying to defend anybody, but faced with a helicopter bill for $20,000-$30,000 for somebody that's been in the death zone for the best part of a day, I don't know, Thom. I'm just chucking it out there for people to consider.
Meaning, so if Himalayan Traverse had said, we're going to do a rescue, that we're going to invest $30,000 because that's what the helicopter would be probably coming from Kathmandu, and they're not going to get above Camp 2 anyway, probably, right? So they're going to get to Camp 2, but you could theoretically drop Sherpa. I think that's what.
Then the chopper's got to wait there for the Sherpas to go up to Camp 2, which could take 2 or 3 days.
Yeah.
In theoretically, then come back down. Somebody's got to pay for this chopper, and these, everything's so cutthroat with a budget and everything. And I'm not saying this is morally right. I'm just pointing out the reality of the situation. Is it's Everest, it's the high mountain. Everyone knows what they're getting involved in.
The details of the ladders getting taken down or not, I think I got it wrong. I said in a story the other day that they had pulled all the ropes and ladders, and I think I was wrong, and I just didn't know where to get the clear answer. I did reach out to the SPCC, who I've interviewed several times for the channel, so I have no reason to believe that they were avoiding me, but I'm not exactly the Associated Press or Reuters or the New York Times, so they didn't reply back. Totally cool. I'm Everest mystery, right? So, but I said, I believe I was incorrect saying that they pulled all the ropes and ladders, but I don't know if that's true or not, or if that was your understanding.
So our summit was the last summit of the season.
Yeah.
As such, they want to get those ladders in as quick as possible behind us. I'm guessing to stop tourists wandering up the mountain thinking that they might be able to summit Everest or something. I don't know, but they want to get those ladders in on, near enough the last day.
Did you see any of the Icefall Doctors in the Icefall going up when you were coming down?
No, because our Sherpas went and got the ladders. The Sherpa that I summited with literally got back down after our 19 hours in the Icefall. I gave him my low altitude boots, my 6,000 meter boots, because they were dry and his boots were soaking, and said, look, there you go, keep them. And he wore them back up with 2 Sherpas who I never got to meet because I didn't pop my head in the kitchen tent. I was just like, right, I'm sort of done here now. But there were 2 Sherpas in there with him waiting to go back up. And the 3 of them, they went back up and got the ladders. This is because it's kind of, is it the SCC? I don't know the acronym.
SPCC, the Sagarmatha Pollution Control Committee. Yeah. Because
they'd done us the grace of leaving the ladders in place while we came down, obviously. Otherwise, they'd be...
Is it the 30th by now? So it's already a little bit
29th.
Still the 29th, which was supposedly going to be the last day.
Thom, I thought we summited on the 20th.
I think you were the 28th.
I haven't even stopped to look at the calendar. I'm not really that bothered, to be honest.
Yeah, no.
But the deal was, look, we'll leave all the ladders in place for your climbers to come back down. However, your company will go up and get them in. Is that a deal? And they obviously said yes. That's appropriate.
And then how many did they take? Every single ladder down, even that gigantic one that crossed that massive crevasse?
Yeah. So there were 2 across that massive crevasse. One was looking decidedly ropey by the time we got down to it, so we gave that one a miss. I heard, and I like to think so, that they left one of the big ladders in place.
Yeah, because somebody corrected. Oh, you're wrong, Thom. You got it wrong. They left a ladder in place, and I'm like, whoops. Maybe that would have been the right place, but he still fell into a crevasse. Let's put it that way, for 2.5 days. So the ladders are gone, essentially. Maybe that big crevasse, you would have found him next year. He would have been laying there right at the edge of the crevasse, probably, which is just heartbreaking. But so it seemed like then that, and again, this is like looking at the system, not at an individual climber client, that everybody was just presumed that Hillary Dawa was dead. It sounds like it, like he's gone. It's over. Like there's no rescue. He's dead. We're pulling the ladders. And I don't know, the ropes were probably buried. So it wasn't even the ropes that they were pulling, but the ladders. That was the job of Himalayan Traverse, to pull them. And they left one big one up on the big crevasse, as you understand it.
As I understand it, yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Interesting. This is how I learn about you, and I see your absolutely heartbreaking and inspiring post from Kathmandu, because you're back in Kathmandu, and you're thinking that your friend is gone, Hillary Dawa, who seems like a gentle giant of a man who had no business going up above Camp 2, let alone above Camp 4. But that's for Himalayan Traverse to explain. And then you went and met with his family, and that must have been a very touching time for you to speak to them and to show them grace and kindness. I guess I'm trying to put words in your mouth. What was that like? That must have been quite a powerful experience for you.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously I'm going to go and meet the family. That's obviously the least I can do. The issue was the expedition company were putting all this pressure on me to come up with a financial solution or resolution. And all I could say, Thom, to give myself, 3 degrees of separation, whatever that word is no, guys, I'm going to speak to them. I want to see what have we all got to say. I'm not going to agree now, before I've even seen them, that I'm going to pay them money every month. Not that I'm adverse to doing so, but I want to see what they say first. They might say, Chris, keep your money. That's not going to help us. So what happened, Thom, and this is just wrong on so many accounts, is the expedition company kept getting me to one side and saying, right, so you're going to meet the family. You've got to look after them, Chris. You've got to come up with the money. And I'm like, guys, do you not understand that anybody can see you're trying to distance yourself from this problem? And you're trying to put it on me, the client. I don't have to pay them anything. There's no law on this planet, other than my own good nature, that means I owe this family anything, other than a courteous, look, I'm really sorry about your husband, your father. We went to a hotel to meet them, and the expedition company kept saying, listen, this could turn violent. These aren't... what they were trying to say is these individuals, they're not city slickers. They're kind of what we call in the UK country bumpkins. that they're going to turn up with pitchforks and knives, and if you don't immediately agree to pay the money, you know, we've got a big fight on our hands. And I'm just sat there going, this is, you know, they're not going to hurt me. I haven't done anything. Plus the fact I haven't even met them yet. And they turned up, Thom. They were bloody lovely. They were absolutely impeccably dressed, very modern, all obviously carrying smartphones. They all came up and they said, "Namaste, Chris." We shook hands. You know, at this stage I was a bit reserved because of the culture. You know, I'm more of a hug person than a shake hands person. And I made sure to say hello to each and every one of them. There was about six, couple of, you know, one of them was a brother-in-law. One of them was an 8K Sherpa. So, you know, he was a Everest Sherpa and this kind of stuff. And they were all eloquent. Like I say, they were all immaculately dressed and they were so nice. And one of the first things they said is, "Chris, we don't hold you accountable at all. You're just the client. It's the expedition company we want answers from." So, really emotional. I said, "Guys, listen, what's best is just ask me anything on your mind that you want to get resolution. Just ask me." I said, "Your father was a wonderful person. He was a gentle giant. I'm incredibly sorry, you know, what has happened." And before they arrived, Thom, the expedition company, they pulled out an A4 copy of my passport page. And then they pulled out a contract. I, the undersigned Christopher Thrall, whose passport details are agree to pay per month. And I was so just gobsmacked and dumbfounded at this stupidity of putting a contract together without, you didn't even speak to me. You know, all you're trying to do in your minds, you think if I will agree to pay them, they're going to leave your company alone. In addition, they kept wanting me to keep the narrative simple. And I said, "Look, I don't lie. I will just tell them the truth. The truth is far more believable than if I start trying to fictionalize." You know, the guy sat down on his backpack. I went on and he didn't catch us up. That's so much more easy to understand. So yeah, that ended up with me, let's just say, ripping that contract up and, shall we say, placing it somewhere. It was crazy. So I met the family and they got round to asking me, "Look, can you support Hillary's daughter financially? She's 18 now. She's just about to embark on college. She's got all the expenses of life without her dad." And I said, "Yeah, absolutely. I've got a popular YouTube channel. People are already approaching me saying, 'Look, Chris, I think I know a way to help.' Obviously, I'm going to try to help you." And with that, I say goodbye. I'm pretty much in bits at this point, Thom. They were so graceful to think they were so stoic to think what they'd been through. And to think that girl, she didn't even shed a tear. She was that brave. That, yeah, it kind of broke. I was a bit broken for a couple of hours, you can say. Nothing compared to what they're going through. In the meantime, one of my Royal Marines brothers had got a fundraiser up and running. It's got quite a considerable amount of money in it now. So that's kind of really helped the family out.
This is that GoFundMe page, I believe I saw.
Yes.
I'll be sure to make sure that anywhere this goes that people can go to it, because it should continue to be raising funds, hopefully.
So Yeah, so that was that. And when I got back to the hotel, I asked the expedition boss, "Are you going back to meet the family now?" And he said, "Yeah, yeah." So I said, "Look, I've got something. Could you give something to Mendu, the daughter?" And I gave her the little doggy, the little wolf that my son had given me to take to the summit to keep me safe. And I said, "Could you give this to her and tell her that I hope this will keep her safe?" And lo and behold, her dad crawled out the wilderness the next day. So it was a good result all round.
But real quick, so not real quick, like go as long as you want. But one more question I kind of want to ask is, when you found out that Hillary Dawa was alive, bring me to that moment. What was that for you?
So I was just getting on the plane at Kathmandu to fly to Delhi. From Delhi, I was going to fly to London Heathrow. And I started to see a couple of comments on my Instagram post saying, "Don't worry, he's alive. They found him." And because there were two comments almost instantaneously that I read, I thought either I'm getting spammed by bots or there's something in this. So I quickly flicked up the internet and typed in Hillary Dawa. And immediately the first picture that came up was the one of him being rescued, or one of the ones of him being rescued. And I knew immediately it was him because he was wearing exactly what he wore when I last saw him. So it couldn't have been AI or something like that. I'm just about to get on the plane. So I rattled off a quick, "Hello, friends. I am aware that Hilly has been reported found. This is obviously unbelievable. I'm just getting on the plane. I'll write more when I land." It was words to that sort of effect. You know, Thom, I'm just cruising through at this stage. Do you know what I mean? You can't let these things affect you. I don't mean Hillary Dawa walking out the Icefall. I mean, you know, if you take on tough challenges in life, you've got to be prepared that people die. That's why they're tough challenges. This is why not everybody does this. And with that in mind, you have to develop a certain mindset. I'm not suggesting that we're sociopaths or anything, but I'm saying that, you know, I'm not going home to England and carrying any of this with me. Absolutely no way. I've been chronically depressed. I've been chronically addicted to drugs. I've been home. I've done all that. I'm never ever doing that again. Not least because I've got the most beautiful family, my son and my girlfriend, that God could ever have blessed me with. And so, you know, I'm leaving this in the pool. I don't mean that nastily. I'm just saying, well, what do you want me to do? Go home and be depressed? Start taking drugs? How is that going to help anyone? Swear that I'm never going out the front door again unless I'm wrapped in cotton wool? That's never going to happen. We went up in the big mountains. They're dangerous. Not everybody makes it down. And in this case, Hillary didn't make it down. That's, you know, that is part of the deal of Everest, unfortunately. Not saying it was a good result, not trying to, you know, but so what I'm saying, Thom, is I'm not probably the emotional roller coaster that people probably thought I was. Absolutely delighted for his family. 1 minute I'm hugging his daughter and crying. The next minute, her daddy has been found. That is a great result. But that doesn't negate the fact that you've just been through one hell of an experience, and you've got to remain a little bit aloof if that's the right. You know, you've got to remain a little bit detached from it all, or it's going to destroy you. And you know, it was the same. I went on a scuba diving expedition to the Antarctic Polar Circle. Our very first dive, a girl drowned. Like I say, Marathon Disablers. The very first night we started running across the desert, I looked across the tent opposite me, just saw this guy. He died of a heart attack, and I think they managed to bring him, you know, they managed to resuscitate him. I've been on holiday when my best friend drowned literally in front of me, and I had to deal with all the, the morgue and the police and all this sort of stuff when you're supposed to be on holiday. There's a couple more occasions as well. It's an interesting life.
I can't thank Chris Thrall enough for having taken the time to share his story. I'm sure there are so many questions that have yet to be answered that are out there. Short term, we pray and hope for the full recovery of Hillary Dawa Sherpa, and that the investigations are researched, and that hopefully Hillary Dawa Sherpa will become a symbol for change on this great mountain that has really fallen prey to overt commercialization. And that's why I wanted to tell you about my 10 commandments of Everest. I've put them on my Patreon page. They're in the link in the description. Click that, and you need to be a free member in order to read the 10 commandments. It's free. There's tons of exclusive content over there as well. If you've liked this video and you're still here, please be sure to click the subscribe button. Also head over to patreon.com/Everest Mystery for exclusive content and the 10 commandments of Mount Everest and the full video interview with Chris Thrall. It's captivating and well worth a listen. And in the meantime, do a good deed. Don't ask for anything in return, and make the world a better place, one tiny step at a time.